How's it going, everybody? I am DeanoGTO, and today we're going to be talking about the Canon Jagdpanzer 105 in comparison to the Canon Jagdpanzer 90mm. So I'm going to call it the Jagdpanzer 90 and the Jagdpanzer 105 just to make this a bit easier. And this part of the video is just going to be reserved for people who have the previous 90mm version of the tank, just to let you know whether or not it's worth changing to the 105 version. So, as you'd expect, for the most part, the two tanks are pretty much identical except for the guns. You lose a little bit more camo rating after firing with the 105. You have a slightly less power. You have slightly less power to weight ratio due to being like a third of a ton heavier because of the bigger gun, as you'd imagine. You have 150 less health. I imagine that's because you're getting a bigger gun and you're getting higher penetration, you're getting higher shell speed, all that sort of stuff. That's just like a balancing factor, I would guess. You are losing about 400 DPM with the 105 in comparison to the 90mm. However, both guns have the same accuracy, same aiming time. They have the same gun traverse limits, they have the same gun depression and elevation, they have the same gun traverse speed. The only real difference is that the 105mm has a significantly faster shell speed, also has 150 extra alpha damage. For some reason, I fucked that up. But yeah, 150 extra alpha damage and has 30 extra penetration. So the 105 is basically sacrificing a bit of DPM in order to get a more consistent, higher shell speed sort of gun. So, in my opinion, I think the Canon Jagdpanzer 105 is the better vehicle because, for the most part, from my experience driving tank destroyers in World of Tanks, you don't typically get a chance to really use the DPM very often. Now, I don't actually have a Canon Jagdpanzer 105 or a Canon Jagdpanzer 90mm, so I can't like give an exact approximation of this, but typically when it comes to tank destroyers and water tanks, you only really get to fire one shot at an enemy tank before they duck into cover. So you may as well have the higher alpha damage and the faster shell speed, because it makes the shot easier to lead, and you also get higher damage for each shot you manage to get off. Because typically, what I end up doing in tank destroyers is I fire one shot, then I fall back behind cover because I'm inevitably spotted if I have to fire through a bush. Because a lot of positions these days, you do need to be pretty much looking through the bush. You can't really use the like the solid bush sort of mechanic that much anymore, from my experience at least. So from my from my point of view, I would say the 105 armed version of the tank is going to be easier to use, going to be easier to get more damage out of. But the Canon Jagdpanzer 90mm does have the higher DPM, so it does have, in general, the higher damage potential. But yeah, that's just my opinion going off of from my experience, but my experience could be a bit out of date. You might be able to use the DPM on the 90mm version a lot more effectively than I'm giving it credit for. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in regards to that there, because I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is, but going from experience and just my general time playing the game, I would say the 105 version is going to be easier to use because of the faster shell speed, higher alpha damage, higher penetration, just better overall consistency and easier to lead gun. So on to the second part of the video, in which I'll compare it to a bunch of different vehicles. Okay, so we're back with the second part of this video. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to actually compare the Canon Jagdpanzer to the Skorpion G, and then I'll talk about the STRV at the end. So in comparison to the Skorpion G, the Canon Jagdpanzer is just clearly a worse machine overall, because Skorpion G gets 100 extra alpha, has 22 less pen, which is not really that significant because 246 pen is still a pretty substantial amount of penetration to have. It only has a 0.62 worse reload time than the Canon Jagdpanzer, which is bizarre. And, well, the Skorpion G has a full turret to use as well, and only has to sacrifice 1 degree gun depression and 1 degree of elevation to get a full turret. That doesn't seem like too bad of a trade. It has better accuracy than the Canon Jagdpanzer. It has a very slightly worse aiming time, but the aiming time overall will probably wind up being easier to use because it has, just in general, like it's just able to sit still and aim its gun more often because of the full turret that it has, and it's also able to engage tanks like while pointing the gun over its rear, which something neither of these other two tanks can really do. Well, I suppose the STRV you can kind of make an argument for, but the Canon Jagdpanzer you really can't. When it comes to survivability, it has an extra 100 health. Granted, it's a significantly bigger target, but yeah, like it has 100 extra health to really like play with. And when it comes to mobility, like yes, the Canon Jagdpanzer is faster, but it's not as much. It's not by as much as you'd expect, because well, Scorpion G can do 60 and 60 forward, 20 in reverse. The Canon Jagdpanzer does 70 forward, 20 in reverse. So it's not like it's not as fast as I was expecting. I was expecting this thing to be an absolute just monster when it came to straight line speed, and the specific power is only 2.2 better than the Scorpion G. So it just doesn't seem that impressive to me. Now the concealment, as you'd imagine, is significantly better than the Scorpion Gs. And by the way, all three of these vehicles are using this equipment setup with the camo installed. So just so you're aware. Yes, the concealment is considerably better on the Canon Jagdpanzer, but considering you're usually going to be using bushes and stuff in these vehicles anyway, I don't really think it matters as much as you may expect. Because as soon as you fire the gun, you're going to get spotted anyway. So yeah, and the view range is the same on the vehicles, on the Scorpion G and the Canon Jagdpanzer as well. So overall, just looking at these two vehicles, the Scorpion G just seems by far the better package because it just seems way more versatile. Like having that full turret just completely changes the game. Like it just seems like a significantly easier vehicle to make use of, and I really don't know like why they were so hesitant with making the Canon Jagdpanzer good when they could have made it significantly better than it actually is. I think it might just be the fear of making another E25. I think that's probably what made them like chicken out a bit when it came to the Canon Jagdpanzer. So now let's talk about the STR-VS1. So the STR-VS1 technically has about the same DPM as the Scorpion G, and whenever it's in siege mode it has about 1.5 second aiming time with 0.3 accuracy, so it's actually slightly less accurate than the Scorpion G, but has the fastest aiming time of the group. It also gets an extra 20 pen over the Canon Jagdpanzer, and has the same alpha damage. So, in theory, the STR-V has the better gun in comparison to the Canon Jagdpanzer, but the problem with the STR-V is you have to be used to the siege mode mechanics in order to really make use of this tank. That's the main problem with this thing. It makes it very difficult to recommend getting the STR-V over the Canon Jagdpanzer because it's hard to really know whether or not somebody will like the STR-V or not, because I always recommend people try the UDES 03 out before they even touch the STR-V, because it's a very specific playstyle, and you do need to be aware of it before you get the machine. Because if you buy this machine prior to being aware of it, then it may wind up being a very painful tank to drive. That's just from my experience, at least. Now it does have a very good like reverse speed to like help it with its overall versatility in comparison to the other two vehicles that are here. But when it comes to its forward speed, it's easily the slowest. Now it has a half a ton, or what's the best way to describe that? It has 0.5 worse horsepower per ton ratio in comparison to the Scorpion G, and is about 2.5. It's about 2.5 worse than the Canon Jagdpanzer. So yeah, as you'd expect, it's significantly slower than the Canon Jagdpanzer because of the worst part of weight ratio and the top speed. When it comes to the camo is actually pretty much identical between the STR-V and the Canon Jagdpanzer. It's almost identical. It's actually pretty insane. So yeah, for the most part, like I actually do think the STR-V is the better vehicle overall in comparison to the Canon Jagdpanzer, but the problem is it's very difficult to recommend that vehicle and to people who haven't played through the Swedish Tank Destroyer line. So yeah, for the most part, for most people, I would say the Scorpion G is the best of the group, with the Canon Jagdpanzer in second and the STR-V in third. But if you're familiar with the siege mode mechanics, I would actually say the Scorpion G is first by a small amount in comparison to the STR-V, and then the Canon Jagdpanzer will come in third. So I do think the STR-V is a very powerful vehicle. I think it's more powerful than the Canon Jagdpanzer, but yet again, I can't recommend it unless you played the siege mode mechanic vehicles, because it is very strong, but you do need to be used to how that feels and how it works, because otherwise it's going to feel very, very weird. So yeah, that's my general opinions on that. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What's your opinions on the STR-V versus the Canon Jagdpanzer and the Scorpion G? Because personally, I think the Scorpion G is probably never going to lose its crown as the king of the Tier 8 premium tank destroyers. The only thing that can come close, I would say, is probably the SU-130 or whatever the hell it's called. that's going to come at some point, which is basically the Soviet version of the Scorpion G. So I'll be curious to see how that works out. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one.